Hello, everybody. How are you? Let's see. I'm gonna get my chat box pulled up. My name is Brooks Mitchell. This is Kellyanne LeConte. We're here at the Space Science Institute in Boulder, Colorado, and we'll be joined a little bit later by Dan Gilbert of the Afterschool Alliance in Washington, D.C. So I did kind of want to help you guys orient a little bit. This is a new operating system for us, Zoom. I shouldn't say a new webinar software for us, Zoom. We've transitioned over. So this is our first webinar. We're going to be kind of learning the ropes together to a certain extent, but I do want to show you guys in your upper left hand, you should see a button that says Q&A, and you should see a button that says chat. So either one of those will be good for if you want to say anything to us halfway through the webinar, or let's see, I'll pull up my chat box. I'll just write a little message here. Hey, everyone. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, if you guys want to pull up the chat box and introduce yourself, I know your name's up there, but if you want to say maybe what city and state you're from. So I see Melissa Mercer. And Melissa, where are you from, if you want to put that in the chat box? And while you guys are doing that, I also want to point you to the Q&A. So if you have a question for me at some point, like somebody just asked, I think they logged on and they're like, oh, have they actually started? So you can use that Q&A function to check that, and I'll get a little pop-up. So it should be pretty easy. So it looks like we have some folks from, oh, hey, Gary. Awesome. So I have a couple of poll questions. They're really simple. I just wanted to get some ideas. Let's see. We'll start with this one. Actually, we'll do a Lights On After School one. So I want to see if your library has participated in Lights On After School before. Or if this is a new thing, you're just ready to find out more information, or if this is something that you're familiar with and you've done before. All right, I see some familiar faces. All right, so it looks like an overwhelming majority of you have not participated in Lights On After School before. Let's see if I end this poll, if it'll show you the results. Nope, well, I'll just tell you. So 20 people responded, no, I have not participated in Lights On After School before, and 2 people responded that they have. So yeah, there we go.
Looks like we're reaching the right audience.
Yeah, it sounds like we got the right group. All right. And, you know, I'll go ahead and do a second poll here. I just wanted to see if some of you all, I know you're just coming off the 2018 summer, so I wanted to get an idea if you're going to be participating in the 2019 summer reading theme next year. So let me launch this. Okay, wow, I got a very obvious answer. I'll give a few more seconds for that.
I see we've got Jennifer Hendricks has raised her hand.
Ooh. So I'm going to end that poll and we'll share those results. Let's see. So most of you, pretty much the opposite of the last question, 23 have said yes, we will be participating in the 2019 summer reading theme. 3 of you said no, and I guess that means that 8 of you guys aren't paying attention. No, I'm just kidding. All right. So again, let me just check this Q&A. Sharon, I think you responded to the Q&A, but you're from Montgomery, Alabama. Roll Tide or War Eagle, whichever you align with. All right. 2019 summer reading theme will be a universe of stories. So we're really excited about it, of course. All right, so we're going to get going here. Let me put this chat box away. So again, just a quick little orientation. It seems like most of you have logged on and found your way around. That Q&A and the chat and raising your hand is going to be in the top left. So at any point during the presentation, if you have a question, just, let's see. Click on one of those things, Kellyanne. It might not be quite as smooth as our other webinars, but we'll get there eventually.
We'll get there.
Yeah. And let's see, yeah. So we'll move on from here and just talk a little bit. Some of you guys may have heard all this already. We'll do a quick agenda. So introduction reminders. Dan is going to be presenting about Lights On After School. And then about halfway through, I'm going to jump on and do some hands-on or talk about a hands-on STEM activity that would be good if you were partnering with an after-school organization. After that, Dan's going to finish his presentation on Lights On Afterschool, and then we'll have a Q&A just so you guys can ask some questions if you need help finding any resources. At the end, after this webinar is over, you'll be redirected to our SurveyMonkey link. Our web czar, Greg, isn't here this week, so if you need a certificate of attendance to prove that you went to this webinar, shoot me an email, and I'll be happy to provide that for you early next week. All right, so our group, our big connection to the library world is the Star Library Network. Most of you have probably heard about this, maybe that's how you found out about this webinar. But our Star Library Network is just kind of a go-to place for librarians that want to immerse themselves in STEM. So there's tons of professional development resources there, webinars like what we're doing now, newsletters. We launch those about twice a week, and they're usually just chock full of awesome information, free resources, different other STEM resources that you can access for free. Sometimes there's like mini grant opportunities on there. So you definitely want to sign up for the Starnet newsletter. We have informative blogs. We have how-to videos on there as well. So there's quite a slew of resources. And yes, if you haven't heard by now, you should definitely sign up. And then upcoming webinars. This is actually our first time seeing you all since you've been doing summer reading. It's so busy, I'm sure. So if you are interested in attending one of our upcoming webinars, we have two coming up in the month of September. The first one is going to be Join an International Lunar Celebration. So this is all about International Observe the Moon Night. And traditionally, we've done two of these webinars in the past where we've brought on our friend Brian Day, and he's talked about the Lunar Trek program. We're going to pivot a little bit. We'll still maybe talk about Lunar Trek a little bit because it is a very, very cool website. But that webinar recording is available. You can check that out. We're going to have Vivian White of the Night Sky Network talking about ways that you can use some of their resources and ways that you can connect with subject matter experts to have a really, really awesome out of this world lunar celebration for International Observe the Moon Night. That's going to be Thursday, September 6th. And I realize now because I'm screen sharing, you probably can't click into this link. But if you go to starnetlibraries.org and you search for our webinars, so /resources/webinars.
I'll put it up there.
Thanks. And then after that, we're going to be doing out of this world engineering. So this is kind of fun. I love doing engineering activities. And so many of them are, about solving our real world Earth problems. But I thought it would be fun to do a few activities that talk about engineering. Oh, Lorna, yes, Starnet is free. It's a free resource for anybody, any informal educators that wants to access it. It's designed for libraries in mind, but if you're an after-school provider, then I think you would really find some great stuff on there too. So yeah, Out of This World Engineering, Wednesday, September 26th, and we'll just be highlighting 4 or 5 different kind of space-themed engineering activities. So upcoming conferences, we're going to be jet setting around the country, giving presentations, giving sessions, doing some hands-on training during the next few months. So I listed them up here. The Association of Rural and Small Libraries. Kellyanne, you'll be attending there?
I sure will, and I'll be presenting with 2 members of the Collaborative Summer Learning Program, and we'll be talking about NASA at my library in summer 2019. So lots of cool activities and things from NASA, so come to visit us. We've got 2 sessions.
I would love to go to that, except I will be at the Colorado Association of Libraries at that same time. And we'll be presenting 2 sessions, one on earth science and earth science activities, and another one on engineering activities with 2 of our one of our partners here in Colorado. So if you're in Colorado, you probably already heard of Cal, you're probably already ready to go, but definitely want to check that out. At the end of the month, Kellyanne, you and Annie will be at the Association of Science and Tech Centers.
That's right, and so we'll be presenting to mainly museum professionals at that conference rather, about the collaborations between museums and libraries that are happening all across the country.
Yeah, awesome. And then early November, Annie Holland and I will be at the let's see if I can get this right, Young Adult Library Services Association Symposium. I just call it YALSA. And that's going to be, again, in Salt Lake City from early November, November 2nd through November 4th. So if you're at any of those conferences, shoot us a message. We'd love to see you. Please come to our sessions and come chat with us afterwards. And so we were talking about the STEM Activity Clearinghouse. We're talking about all the awesome Starnet resources. I'm not going to talk about this too much because hopefully most of you are using the Clearinghouse. But if you have not, it is your one-stop shop, free shop, for STEM resources and STEM activities from all across the web. So what we've done, we've taken reputable activities from good sites like, NASA Wavelinks or Discovery Engineering. So really places that we've kind of vetted and know and trust that they have good activities. We've put them all in one sortable area. And so if you want to go through and you want to find, let's say, I have 30 minutes to do a astronomy activity on Saturday with $5 of materials or less. You can go in and you can set those parameters and you can search. We have about 200 activities on there right now, and that number is always growing. So when you're thinking about, maybe doing some space themed activities next summer, I hope you check out the clearinghouse. We have a slew of space themed activities, probably a disproportionate amount of space themed activities.
Could be a bit.
Yeah. And also, if you do an activity, please leave a review. That helps other librarians figure out what's best for them, what's working, what's not working. So yeah, it's clearinghouse.starnetlibraries.org. We'll be referencing some activities from there today. And if you have any questions about it, feel free to shoot me an email. All right, so with that, we are going to turn things over to our friend Dan Gilbert. Dan is a member of the Afterschool Alliance. You should be able to see him in the bottom right corner. And just a quick little tip, in your video pod, there should be a button that allows you to switch the PowerPoint screen with the video presenter. I don't know why I'm doing my hands like this, but if you want your video screen to be bigger, you can hit that button and you can pull and drag the video screen to make it bigger. So Dan, I'm going to stop screen sharing here. And if you want to pull up your PowerPoint.
Okay. Do I have it up?
Looks good.
Okay, great. So hi everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Dan Gilbert, and I'm excited to be joining you today. In today's webinar, my goals are kind of threefold. First, I'm going to be going over precisely what Lights On Afterschool is and why it's important to the after-school fields, as well as to kids, parents, and communities around the country. Then I'm going to go into a little bit of detail on this year's official Lights On Afterschool theme around library partnerships. And then lastly, I'm going to give an overview of the basics of planning a successful Lights On Afterschool event and just discussing some broad strategies for maximizing the impact of your celebration. And at that point, I'm also going to have Brooks discuss a few options for activities that you can do as part of your Lights On Afterschool, just to make sure that you don't have to reinvent the proverbial wheel. So I'm also really excited that Brooks and the team over at the Space Science Institute invited me to join the webinar, because I think there are some great opportunities to leverage STEM activities in particular, like those in the STEM Activity Clearinghouse that Starnet has aggregated, and that'll really make the planning process for Lights On Afterschool events easier for those of you who are particularly interested in including kind of a STEM flavor there. So to duplicate, now I am both in video and in a picture on your screen. So my name is Dan Gilbert. I'm a project manager with the Afterschool Alliance, where I work as a member of our communications team. And then, as we mentioned, I wanted to note up front that at the end of the webinar, we are going to have a dedicated Q&A time. So feel free to type any questions that you may have into that Q&A box. So what exactly is Lights On Afterschool? So Lights On Afterschool is a chance for after-school programs around the country to really celebrate and showcase exactly what they do every day and make the case to their community, to parents, to policymakers, and to the media that after-school programs are essential for students and their families. It's also an opportunity to highlight the changing face of what after-school programs really look like for kids. It's not just daycare. After-school programs around the country are providing engaging, hands-on enrichment opportunities for kids that enhance and build on school-time learning in really unique ways. And while plenty of people may not be aware of what these programs do every day, or plenty of people do know that, there's a lot of others who probably don't. And that's why hosting a Lights On Afterschool event is a great opportunity to educate communities about the importance of out-of-school time programming and education, and create brand new advocates in the community. So Lights On Afterschool allows you to bring attention to the need for more after-school programs and resources in your community. And it also gives you the freedom to create an event that does this in a way that you and the parents of kids in the programs and the kids think works best for you. So partners for Lights On Afterschool include 4-H After School, Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCA, and 21st Century Community Learning Center programs, among others. And Lights On Afterschool events generate thousands of newspaper, radio, and TV stories across the country every year, including every major media market and also targeted congressional districts, which I'll talk a little bit more about the kind of congressional and policy angle later as well. So to bring it back around quickly to the kind of library partnerships connection. So some of you may know that last year the Afterschool Alliance put a survey out to the after-school field to learn more about the many ways that after-school programs partner with and capitalize on the resources that libraries provide. And we learned a lot about these important connections. And last September, we put out the Library and After-School Partnerships Report, which detailed the overlap. And we decided that we wanted to keep the momentum up. I seem to have skipped ahead a couple. Anyway, catching myself. So this year, Library Partnerships has been made an official theme for Lights On Afterschool, and we're really extremely excited that both Starnet and the Young Adult Library Services Association have both signed on as official partners for this year's Lights On Afterschool celebration. We know that many after-school and summer learning programs are either run directly by or can take place in libraries around the country, and even more after-school programs partner with their local libraries to take advantage of the unique educational resources and experiences that libraries can provide. So this year we decided that we wanted to highlight all of these great programs and resources in a really intentional, deliberate way. And I hope that by the end of today's webinar, you feel like working with programs, or if you run programs, working with them to plan a Lights On After-School celebration seems like an easy and valuable opportunity for your library and for your other partners that you work with in your community. So from the report, we did learn that almost 3/4 of after-school programs have worked with public libraries before in some capacity. Of those programs, there was a clear emphasis on taking advantage of the library space for summer and literacy programming, as well as to visit particular exhibits and resources. But many programs didn't take full advantage of the opportunities that many of their libraries presented. And so while a few programs took advantage of opportunities like STEM education activities or receiving help planning out their curricula, as you can see from the bottom chart here, most programs simply didn't capitalize on the full range of resources and opportunities that partnering libraries can offer. So this led us to the conclusion that library partnerships were really a critical aspect of programming that we wanted to highlight this year in Lights On Afterschool. And so on top of that, I also want to just take a moment to discuss why Lights On Afterschool is so important in the bigger picture, and why we here at the Afterschool Alliance think it's so important to reach out and engage communities in Lights On to highlight the important work that out-of-school educators, both in after-school programs and in libraries, are doing around the country every day. So we know from extensive research that after-school programs provide the building blocks that lead to student success in school, in work, and in life, from social skills to work habits to reading and gains in math performance. And yet many people don't really know about the important role that these programs play in the lives of kids and families around the country. So after-school programs provide much more than just a safe place for kids after the school day ends. They increasingly are providing some really incredible educational opportunities and critical supports that help kids do anything from discovering their passions to building resilience to learning about communication and the importance of teamwork and self-control. So those of you who are familiar with myself or any of my team here at the Afterschool Alliance, you probably know that we focus as much on advocacy and policy activities as we do on our other communications and research related stuff. So it probably won't surprise you that we have some robust and quite frankly impressive data around public support for after-school programs. So for example, overall, we know that 89% of parents who have a child in an after-school program are satisfied with the quality of the programming, and that 84% of parents support public funding for after-school programs. And so while this is a wonderful sentiment, but we all know public sentiment doesn't always mean that funding things like after-school programs, or libraries for that matter, is a political priority everywhere. And so it is, in spite of this overwhelming public support, the data tells another story about after-school programs. So while more kids than ever before are in after-school programs around the country today, for every child in an after-school program, there are 2 kids waiting to be in a program if one were available and affordable. So even more critically, there are actually 9.7 million kids from lower income families in particular who would be in programs if one were available. But unfortunately, the public support for providing after-school learning opportunities that we saw in the previous slide hasn't really been fully realized for far too many kids. So, and lastly, through our partnership with this Starnet, Star Library Network, we've really been focusing on the importance of providing STEM skills and programs to kids around the country. So after-school programs are increasingly, especially over the course of the past decade, providing critical exposure to STEM for kids and giving them really, really important opportunities to discover and pursue their passions in fields that will support the economy of the future, but also will support their future livelihood. Yet unsurprisingly to many of us, most after-school programs simply don't have the resources to go really deep on STEM-related topics. And so this is one of the many areas in which we think that partnering with libraries really builds a critical link in supporting youth exposure to high-quality STEM resources and opportunities. And I think that the STEM Activity Clearinghouse is a great example of providing great hands-on materials at very, very, very low barrier to entry. And I'll let Kellyanne and Brooks talk more about that later. And furthermore, we know that a whopping 70% of parents say that after-school programs should offer STEM programming. And so we know the demand is really there. We just need to find more ways to give children access to STEM, especially kids who may not have access to the kind of high-quality STEM learning experiences in other parts of their education. And so to help make sure that programs have opportunities to provide engaging hands-on STEM programming, we have also partnered with 4-H to make 4-H National Youth Science Day another one of our official partners in this year's Lights On After School. And 4-H has generously offered to give out 50 of this year's Code Your World kits as prizes in our weekly Lights On After School raffles, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. So overall, the point of hosting a Lights On After School event is not just to build long-term support for after-school programs and their partners, but also to build new relationships between these programs and the communities they serve, and also community-based organizations around them. So I'm sure that I'm preaching to the choir here, but public libraries are such a critical hub in many communities that it's really important that libraries be included in Lights On After School events. And so it's really important to figure out how Lights On After School can help sustain and promote programs and libraries and the connections between them and communities. And so for us, our kind of perspective on this is that this is where relationships, using Lights On to build relationships with media and with policymakers really comes in. So Lights On, which since I haven't mentioned it this far because I'm reneging on my responsibilities, is on October 25th this year. But it's more than just a one-day thing. Through the course of planning a Lights On After School event, you'll have opportunities to strengthen relationships and build new relationships with many other community partners in your area. So if you don't already have relationships with all of the after-school programs, it's a great chance to build the relationships with them. But it doesn't stop there. You can reach out to other nonprofits, other community-based organizations, and even businesses to build up these new relationships. So I'll be taking a little more time in a bit to talk about the planning process and to make sure that your event is planned with intention and with clear goals about what you want to come out of it. And so I know that Starnet has also developed some of these really invaluable community dialogue resources that Brooks may touch on a little bit later that can help you get in the door with folks in your communities that you may not already be working with, as well as in any new partnerships that may come out of the process. So it's obviously my hope that many of you either provide after-school programming or have partnered with other organizations in your area that do in the past. But if you haven't already started these partnerships, you'll probably be unsurprised that I would love for you to reach out to these programs in your communities. Even if you've already developed some partnerships with after-school programs, it's also always important to make sure that you're partnering with as many of them as you can, just to make sure that they know all of the value that you can bring to the table. Because I think that libraries really serve in that critical hub, and you have so many resources that a lot of these kind of cash-strapped after-school programs really, really need. And so now I'm going to dive into the planning process a little bit. So if you're already providing or partnering with an after-school program, the good news is that Lights On After-School events really don't need to be difficult to plan or need to be expensive in order to be effective. So here are our 3 easy steps for creating a great Lights On After-School event. Number 1, you and your partners should register your event online through the Afterschool Alliance website. 2, then you can start to work together to plan the event. And 3, last but certainly not least, you should publicize your event by reaching out to your supporters and the media and your communities. So now I'm going to dig into the details on each one of these steps. So number 1 is register your event. You can do this online by visiting our website at afterschoolalliance.org/LOA. Once you've registered your event, you should prepare your mail and your email inbox to receive a bunch of free resources that include email planning tips and updates that we send out to you every week, 10 free posters that help you promote the event locally. We also have, as I mentioned earlier, raffles and prize giveaways every week among our registered programs for event materials leading up to Lights On, which includes giveaways of hundreds of books, the 4-H Code Your World kits I mentioned earlier, over $1,000 worth of STEM prizes, and a lot more. And the earlier you register your event, you're eligible for every raffle that takes place after you register every week. So it's really great to get in early just to make sure that you maximize your chances of winning something. And then also your event will be added to our website for the media in your community to see in a searchable database and on a map. And your event will be counted in our national total. So registering with us here at the Afterschool Alliance is the only way that we know you're holding an event and the only way that you'll be receiving all of these free resources, and that's why it's so important. So step 2 is to start planning your event. And this is really the crux of it. So visit our website and you can find our event planning kit, which we've spent a lot of time developing and refining and adding to and things like that. And so that provides a lot of step-by-step information on how to start planning a successful Lights On After School event. The event planning kit includes sample materials like invitations and activities. It includes graphics and logos for you to download and customize. It has timelines and checklists. We're actually some of the most used resources we have. It includes event ideas and case studies, media materials that you can edit to make specific to your library or your after-school program, handouts and talking points to help share the quote-unquote after-school story with your community. And most importantly, at least from our perspective here at the Afterschool Alliance, we also have entire sections on engaging the media and policymakers. So now that you know where to access all those tools and resources you need, it's time to think about what you and your prospective partners' goals for hosting a Lights On After School event might be. Who are you trying to reach with your message, and who is best to deliver that message? What do you want to be the result of your event? Do you want media coverage, a better relationship with a mayor or police chief? And what are your other partners in the community looking to get out of the event? And where is the overlap? It's also really important to think about your needs. For example, what can you feasibly do with the resources and time that you have? Will you need to find additional sponsors or donors? Lights On can be a great opportunity to do that, since it can give a lot of great visibility to any prospective businesses and sponsors in your communities. There's also, it's a great opportunity just to reach out to other partners in your community that you can team up with on this, just to make sure that no single organization has to really carry the torch alone. We also have a lot of tools to help answer these questions before you start planning. And for example, one great way to showcase students is to make sure that they're involved with the planning and execution of your event wherever possible. Whether that's through demonstrations or giving speeches or planning out event activities or making decorations, there's really no wrong answer. It's a great opportunity to kind of cater to student voice and get a lot of those kids into your library and get them engaged in all of the activities that you have to offer. So speaking of invitations, it's also really, really important to think about who's best to deliver your messages and how they should be doing that. Should you be presenting an award to a particular after-school or library educator champion to highlight all of the great work being done in your community? You can give a presentation on how your partnership has helped to expand opportunities for youth. No matter what your goals are, it's important to keep your audience in mind when you're showcasing your accomplishments and activities. Inviting the parents of the students is obviously a given, but inviting other partners in your community, such as local businesses and community leaders, may be a way to open the door to new long-lasting relationships that you didn't even know were options at the get-go. And so, at risk of sounding like a broken record, we always love it when you invite local elected officials just to see where these tax dollars are being spent, know that there's all of this community support for and buy-in around these programs. So when and where should you host your event is an important question as well. So the answer to this question depends a lot on your goals. If you're able to offer your library as the event location, many after-school programs would really jump at that opportunity. Space is at a premium for a lot of these programs, and they don't always have the ability to host large-scale events that your libraries may be able to do. If there are offsite events and you end up going to another location, make sure that you just send some staff and even maybe set up a booth if you host it offsite that outlines all of the ways that you engage with after school programs, with schools, all the resources that you provide. Just make sure that people know that you're available. For parental involvement, after work hours can be best. But conversely, if media is important to your partners or to you, earlier in the day tends to work better for reporter deadlines, so they can get those in sooner rather than later for their reporting. So here are some other key points to keep in mind for a successful Lights On After School celebration. So make sure to broadcast your event and use it to build support in your community. Remember, all you have to do is register and we'll send you 10 free posters to help promote the event in your community. Don't forget to use social media. Facebook and Twitter can be really, really effective ways of getting the attention, not just of elected officials and policymakers, but also of the media and just members of your community more broadly. And this is important, know that you're not alone. It's always a good idea to leverage any other relationships that you already have with leaders and organizations and parents in your community, just to make sure that you spread news of the event far and wide. So now that you and your partners, what can you and your partners do during the celebration? So it may seem daunting at the get-go, but like I said, Lights On After School events really don't have to be hard to plan. There are plenty of quick ways to celebrate Lights On that don't really take a lot of time, money, or resources. And for plenty of ideas and inspiration, you can just check out our website where we have all these case studies and events that people have submitted in years past. There's also the STEM activity clearinghouse that Starnet set up. There's really opportunities all over the place for you to capitalize on these things without really reinventing the wheel. And so one really, really easy way to set up your event is just by using the Lights On After School branded light bulb art. On our website, you can find the light bulb art. You just print it out and you have kids decorate Lights On After School light bulb art as your event. You can have students write on the light bulbs why after school and the library are so important to them. And then afterward, you can mail them to your elected official's local office along with a note about your program and maybe include some notes from students for good measure. Or you can have the light bulb art take place before your event and just have that as an opportunity for the kids in the community to fill these out and provide decorations for the event whenever you get there. So policymakers at every level of government are critical allies in expanding the resources available to support after-school programs and libraries and other partners in the community. So here are a few ways that you can involve elected officials and potentially candidates for office if that's something you're interested in your event. So we have a sample event invitation on our website as well as sample proclamations that they can declare Lights On After School Day in their communities. So policymakers can also be great messengers to help deliver your talking points to a broader audience and add some real muscle to your outreach efforts. Your event provides them with a great opportunity to position themselves as an ally to an important issue that a lot of voting parents really care about. And having policymakers on tour your site or event also gives the press a reason to cover the event. So make sure there are plenty of great visuals for photos if that's a direction you're trying to go. It also occurs to me on the previous slide, I was supposed to segue back to Brooks, and somehow I did not manage to include that note in my most recent version. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to him to talk about some great event ideas and STEM activities that you can include as part of your celebration.
Thanks, Dan. I was only a little bit offended. Yeah, so if you'll just bear with me for 1 second. So we're going to talk a little bit about a few different activities that you could do for a Lights On After School event or just at your library in general for a STEM program. But we have so many activities on the STEM Activity Clearinghouse that I kind of chose a very nuanced group of our family guides. So our family guides are designed, they were originally created so that you could leave them on your circulation desk and a family that's checking out a book could grab a family guide, they could see an activity and take that home and do it with, really low cost materials, stuff they would already have around at home. So in talking about Lights On After School with Dan, I was kind of thinking that's like a great premise for an after school program. Whether you want to send it home with the kids, that would be one way you could do it, send a family guide home, or just having like stations. And a lot of these activities, depending on your age, are you could definitely do them as a station. So one thing Dan mentioned that really stuck with me was involving the students or the youth patrons, allowing them to help plan and help maybe facilitate your after school program. So if you have some middle schoolers and you want to get them involved, instead of just saying, oh, hey, come and do a fun activity, have them actually, involved from the ground floor. What would be a fun activity for us to do? So the 4 I've listed here, again, realizing you're not going to be able to click into these links. So if you go to the clearinghouse and you search for each one of these activities, you can find each one. And let's see if I can show you where. I don't know if this is going to show up. But on these activities, if you click down on the family guide button, that is how you would access these individual family guides. So they're not the actual activity. They're kind of like an accessory to the activity that you can use to send home, or again, to do station. So daylight in a bottle, these are all engineering activities. We'll talk in just a second about the engineering design process. But daylight in a bottle is a fun activity that you can do in your library as a STEM program, or you can send it home. And essentially you're using a water bottle and a flashlight to illuminate a dark area, right? So it talks about the concept of refraction, how a water bottle would really lighten up a room, and how this is actually something they do in some of the third world countries where they have corrugated tin roofs. They use water bottles as a very cheap, effective, and super environmentally friendly way of lightening their homes. Edible destruction is a fun activity that you create basically an earthquake-resistant structure. You make a fun little shake table, and then you create an earthquake-resistant structure out of food, and you see how well it stands up to your shake table. So again, this can be done in a more, I don't want to say formal, but it can be done in a more library organized setting, or you can send this home. Make your own zip line is essentially exactly what you think it is. Instead of doing like making a bridge or something like that, it's kind of fun to hang a line and add different weights to a little zip line, and have a lot of variables about what's going to most efficiently get a cup full of something, or a zip line from point A to point B. So it's kind of like a bridge building activity, getting from A to B, but it's a little bit easier and a little less materials intensive. And then balloon rockets is what we're going to talk about today. This is a really fun after school activity because on first glance, you think it's going to be really easy, but there are a lot of variables that come into play with balloon rockets. So let me go real quick. I think my next slide is the engineering design process. So the engineering design process, it's like a little bit different if you're going to do an engineering activity or a design challenge than if you're going to do a space science activity, in that you really want to encourage this do it again aspect. So you're going to have your patrons, specifically for balloon rockets. I'll go ahead and do the setup. So we have, I'll show you our materials. You're going to need a balloon, right? And a few of them. Each kid's going to need their own balloon. Obviously, they don't want to share. You're going to need a straw, so a plastic straw. These are just your standard soda straws. I also grabbed this. It's like a bigger milkshake straw, really just because we had it, and that is an option. You might find that this bigger plastic milkshake straw does not work quite as well as the thinner regular straw. You are going to need some tape. So here we have some masking tape. I might actually recommend this just clear tape. And that's going to be to attach the straw to the balloon. And then behind me, you might see we have a target. So our target here, because we work at the Space Science Institute, there are a lot of just random globes of other planets floating around. So if you pull up that family guide, there's a little target that you can create. And the idea is to hang that target, hang some line, some string coming down from it, and the patrons make their own rocket using these materials, okay? So how can you create a rocket to get from point A all the way up to point B by just using a balloon, masking tape, and a straw? Now, of course, depending on the age of your patrons, excuse me, you might set it up for them. You might already have everything pre-cut. If you have younger patrons, or yeah, you might kind of just say, okay, let's play with the size of the balloon, how much thrust we're going to have. If you have older patrons, you might give them those variables like, do you want a long straw or do you want a short straw? I've even included 3 different types of string up here. In testing it beforehand, I didn't really notice too much of a difference, but that could be another variable to throw in. So it is a very big open-ended activity. The premise being get your rocket from point A all the way up to point B. So we're going to take just a few minutes to kind of create our own rockets. Again, it's a short activity, but you want to give time for that redesign, okay? It's not going to work quite like they think it is on the first time. So Kellyanne, do you want to make a rocket?
I'd love to.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and, I don't know, I'm trying to think whether I want a long straw or a short straw. I might start with a long straw because this is going to be easier. I can just cut it if it doesn't seem like it's working quite well. And what are you going to use?
I'm going to go with a wider straw. This is like the smoothie straw.
Okay.
So I'm going to try that with an orange balloon.
An orange, but I don't think color matters too much. But and are you going to cut it or are you just going to go?
I'm going to just leave it.
Okay. All right. So let's see. How much are you going to blow up your balloon?
I'm going to aim for that size.
Okay. I'm just going to go big. I'm going to blow it up as much as I can and see. Hopefully I won't knock a hole through the wall or anything like that.
It's not like it's being filmed or anything.
So I just know this from doing this activity a few times. I'm going to blow up my balloon first, and then I'm going to take my straw on. Of course, you don't want to tie off your balloons. You're just kind of holding the end and pinching it. This might not be the best idea. It might fly out of my arms or something like that, but then you guys can have a good laugh.
Go, Brooks, go.
What color is my hair? And yours, Dan?
It's lovely.
Yeah. And another thing to think about too, where do you want to place the straw? Do you want to place it back here? Do you want to place it over here? You know, if you have younger kids, you might ask them which direction it needs to face. Your older kids will probably know that pretty well. And another thing I've done, and this is just something I learned from doing this at a workshop, I've attached little this is just a paper clip I've attached to the end of the string so that you can thread it more easily through the straw. It just helps. Really, when I did this with adults, the only holdup is that they couldn't thread it through, and so they got a little frustrated. So definitely have something at the end, whether you tape the end of the straw and it helps it thread it through, because just getting floss or fishing line through isn't that easy. Okay, so I'm gonna do mine. I think I'm gonna do it just right at the top right here.
Yeah.
Let me just.
That does look a little tricky one-handed.
It does.
Oh no, you're losing
I know.
volume.
Well, maybe I'll have to blow it back up just a little bit. Thrust, Kelly, and I'm losing thrust. That's my rocket fuel. Yeah. Okay. I think that still looks pretty good. That's pretty big.
Yeah, that's nice. Which string would you like?
Let's see. What did I had the most success earlier with this one, and you'd be surprised when I say I had the most success. It still wasn't that much success. All right. So I want the nozzle pointing this way. Let's see. Would you hand me the end of that pin cap down there? I'll just kind of push the rest through. So again, getting it through the straw the first time is a little tedious. Oh, it's so close. Okay, why don't I try the one with tape on it? So I'll try this floss because my straw's so long.
This one?
Yeah, let's see if that goes in
So
there.
here's the alternative option. Lots of masking tape.
Yeah. Let's see. Dan had a good time watching me kind of struggle through this as we were doing our tech test. Let's see. And then I'm just going to snip off the end just a little bit. Again, to be able to get that through.
I don't know that a pen cap was on the materials list.
I don't think it was.
I think it should be.
I know, sorry. All right, so I've done some alterations here. My straw's a little bit shorter. Let's see if we can get it through. A toothpick works really well for this too.
You almost had it. There we go.
There we go. All right.
We're ready to launch.
And so if you want to be really official with this, of course, you can have everybody go from a pre-measured kind of point. All right.
All right.
Ready? You want to give me a countdown?
Yeah, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, all right.
Success!
So some initial hesitation there, and then the thrust really kicked in there. I think if I were to redesign it, I noticed it spun a lot from the get-go. So I might actually, and then it finally kind of kicked in. So I would probably do less air. It's like it almost had too much thrust.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
So I don't know. Do you want to give it a shot?
Let's try it one more time. I'm going to
Okay.
do the same thread as yours, but I'm going to change out now the straw, and I'm going to do it a little bit differently here. I'm going to go ahead and put the straw in first, just to give you a sense of if you're working with younger kids and maybe you don't have time to let them attach it. If you'd like to just go ahead and have a straw attached, maybe as a kind of a set variable,
Mhm.
just an option for you. So why don't we go ahead and do you mind holding
I'll
that
hold
for
that
me,
for
and
you,
I'll
yep.
get some thrust here. What do you all think? That big, or should I go bigger?
Bigger.
Oh man.
But it's kind of like if you're stuck in the snow or something and you use too much power and your wheels are just going to spin.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I've got.
I'm going to go with kind of the happy middle.
Okay.
Thanks, Hannah.
This is why they pay us the big
All right.
bucks, you know.
And this is sometimes a little bit of a tricky point too, is just as far as which way do you point your engine there, so that the balloon nozzle is pointing in the right direction to get you some thrust. So I'm going to go over here and tape it on there. I'm going to go, let's see, just a little bit further back on the straw. All right, let's do countdown again.
Okay.
Okay. 5,
4,
4, 3,
2,
2,
1.
1.
Woo!
Whoa!
Okay.
Nice spin too.
Yeah. So I think the bigger straw, I don't really notice too much of a difference in the straw size. I thought that the thicker straw was going to spin it around, but it seems like less thrust might be the go-to. It might be the answer.
So hold back on your balloon power there.
But don't tell the patrons that. Let them figure it out themselves as they test and do it again. So if I were doing this, if I were facilitating this, I would, of course, let the kids do it again. Actually, I'd probably have no choice. They'd want to go back and they'd want to improve. So again, that's an important part of engineering activities to me, is letting them redesign and add to it. So congrats, Kelly, and you've bested me again in our STEM design challenge.
I don't know. I think the last one I have the archives. I think you bested me last time.
All right, Dan, whenever you are ready to jump back on.
Okay, 1 second. Okay, so that was a great example of kind of a project-based learning STEM activity that is one of many opportunities that you could do. That I know it's very expensive with the tape and the balloons and the straws, but if you can shell out for those resources, then you can make that a part of your event. So in addition to this kind of stuff, we have different programs have done open houses and site tours that can be fun, great ways to showcase all of the great things that programs are doing every day, whether it's in libraries, outside of libraries. It's definitely a great opportunity. And you can make sure that you send staff to talk to parents and members of the community about the partnership that you have with the programs, or if you run the programs, then you can just have them give this overview of all the different things that the kids experience while they're there. You can also invite local leaders and policymakers to join parents on a student-led tour. And this gives them the opportunity to hear from those people who are directly affected by the great work that programs and libraries and other partners are doing. And kids really can be your best advocates. So after-school programs this year have also registered to host things like art and talent shows, carnivals, festivals, and more. There's really a lot of options. And so on this next slide is the one that I shouldn't have moved on to. But anyway, we encourage you to reach out to the policymakers, because it's always critical to get more resources for libraries and after-school programs. But I'm not going to beat a dead horse too much. And so the next thing is that Lights On Afterschool provides a wonderful opportunity to generate positive news coverage of the programs and their key partners, and to remind the public of the need to provide sufficient funding for libraries and programs and other organizations that help make sure that kids have access to high quality educational opportunities outside of the typical school day. Reporters seek out stories that affect the community. So for many of them, this is really a perfect fit. You can plan your Lights On After School activities with the media in mind. So if you're trying to involve the media, you can make sure that you have compelling visuals, including banners and backdrops for any speakers or performances that you might have, and to keep your timing in mind, like I mentioned earlier. So daily print and broadcast reporters need to file their stories by early afternoon. So you can aim to hold the main parts of your event, like speeches or performance, as early as possible in the celebration. So for example, if your event goes from 3 to 5, you can have the speeches and performances, say at 3:15 p.m. or something like that. You can also make a media list, including local reporters, editors, columnists, bloggers, producers who cover education, anything from education, children and families, parenting, or workplace and community feature stories. Really, this spans a lot of different quote-unquote new types of news issue areas, if you will. So it's also a great idea, broadly speaking, to just invite the public. You can send an announcement to the media, any newspapers in your area a few weeks before your event. You can give them a calendar announcement so that they can publish that and just encourage the public to attend the event, just make sure that people are aware it's going on. And it's great to make sure that you work with the programs and other partners to identify any key messages that you may want to use in advance, and then integrate them into all of your media materials and use them as the focus of any remarks that you may have at the event. Try to keep it to no more than 3 main points. Just when you get past that, things just get jumbled in people's heads. And be sure to tailor any talking points that you develop to reflect what the partnership means to the kids and families in your community. It is also important to make sure that your event has press appeal. So you can send media alerts to entice reporters to cover your event and highlight what will happen at the event and why it's important in the community. Again, we have lots of things to help you out with this on our website. And you can also issue a news release. And if you send out a news release a few days before your event with quotes and event highlights, it'll help reporters to cover your story, even if they can't actually physically come to the event itself. So you can also consider giving press kits to each reporter who may come to the event. Press kits include anything from news releases, background information on the program and on your library, fact sheets on the after school in your area, copies of any speakers' remarks, letters from kids and families about their experiences with the programs in the libraries, information about the many roles that your library plays in the community, just to make sure that they understand the full scope of the activities that libraries have to undertake, as well as copies of any official proclamations, details on upcoming events, and any other interesting information you want. It's really whatever you think fits there, you can put there. And this is really critical. Don't stop the day of the event. This is the most important. Don't waste this media opportunity. You can keep copies of any stories that you may have aired or were published in order to show them to potential funders and to board members or even at future events. And so if you stay in contact with those reporters who came to the event, you can also use that to pitch follow-up stories about your library's educational programming whenever you can. And this is obviously the whole point. Lastly, don't forget that Lights On After School is really a celebration. After all of the hard work of planning has been done, it's important to use the day of to celebrate your accomplishments. You can do it through award ceremonies, contests, open houses, family dinners, anything you want with the rest of the after-school program and library staff, as well as any youth and guests that you want on October 25th. So before I go on to my kind of closing remarks, I noticed in the chat box there were a bunch of folks who hadn't heard about Lights On After School, which number one makes me excited because it means that we're reaching the right audience. But I do want to give just kind of the quick high-level overview of the history of Lights On After School. So the Lights On After School actually predates the Afterschool Alliance. Our organization this year is the 19th annual Lights On After School. The Afterschool Alliance really formed as a result of the campaigns around Lights On After School and our other signature initiatives called the Afterschool for All Challenge a couple years after the first Lights On After School. We've gotten to the point where every year we have over 8,000 events across the country in all 50 states. We have thousands of media pieces that come out about Lights On After School every year in every major media market. We estimate that every year So the 8,000 events, that's only the folks who register with us. So there's probably even more events that we don't capture through our online registration system. And we have it estimated that every year more than 1 million people attend Lights On Afterschool events. So there's a lot of things that we've learned from years past, a lot of great information about things that people have done in previous years, all in that event kit on the Afterschool Alliance website, as well as some of those like kind of generic marketing materials for you to, if you need to tell your board members or your partners about Lights On Afterschool and really sell them on the idea. We have a lot of stuff on afterschoolalliance.org/LOA to help just make sure that you have the full scope of everything in mind as you're trying to move forward with this. And like I said, it is entirely up to you, the kind of scope that you want to go to with Lights On. We have events where thousands of people come, including members of Congress and mayors and governors. We have events that are literally just inviting parents to come see what kids are doing in programs, everything in between. It's really just whatever you think is within your kind of human and financial capital to execute, whatever you have time to plan, you can do it at anywhere along the micro to macro scale. So definitely don't think that this has to be a big undertaking in order to be a really, really great opportunity. So I just wanted to give that last little pitch. So that's really all I have for you today, and I hope you feel like hosting a Lights On Afterschool event or participating in a Lights On Afterschool event is really a doable and a great opportunity to build community support for any education programs that you run at your library, to raise awareness around what you do in your library more broadly, as well as what other after-school programs that you may be partnering with have going on as well. And once again, our website has all the tools you'll need for free. So the sooner you register, the sooner you'll start receiving our weekly planning updates. So with that, I think we can move into the Q&A section.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Dan. That was wonderful. And I just a couple of things before we get into the Q&A, and you know, if you got to log off or anything like that, whenever I close out of this, whenever I end the meeting, you'll be redirected into that SurveyMonkey link. Let us know how we're doing, what we can improve. Again, this is our first time using Zoom, so let us know if it was particularly hard for you to use, if it was easy for you to use. If you've attended before, just give us feedback. That's what we're asking. Secondly, if you want a certificate of attendance, please do email me, and I will get that to you early next week. Also, if you would like a list of the links, like a link bank, you can send that to me. Send me an email, and I will get that provided for you as well. Normally, we'd like to have those on our website, but Greg, our web czar, is gone this week, so we'll get that uploaded next week. This will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, and it'll be uploaded, the slides will be uploaded to our SlideShare. So if you, yeah, I'll put it right here for you, Mary. It's bmitchell@spacescience.org. And yeah, so with that, if you want to ask a question, the Q&A is the best way to do that. You could do it in the chat room. But the Q&A button might be a little bit easier for us to manage everything. So Chris, I know you had some questions, and I'm not sure if you addressed this at any time, Dan, but Chris, I believe this is Chris or Sandra, was asking how many libraries last year participated with Lights On Afterschool?
I have not refreshed my head recently. I think that over the course of the past 3 years, if memory serves, we've generally had somewhere between 250 and 400 libraries either participate in or host Lights On Afterschool events.
Okay.
So roughly 5% of the total. And hopefully this year we'll kick it up into gear.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. So I see another question here. Oh, Melissa, will there be a handout for the slides? Yeah, so we'll get that uploaded to SlideShare, both my slides and Dan's slides. And if you want to go to the Starnet webinars link, so starnetlibraries.org/resources/webinars. That's where all of the webinar resources get uploaded. And we hope that you would share it with everybody and pass it along. Let's see. So it sounded like, Dan, the impression I got was that a lot of people are already doing after school kind of things. They just haven't formalized it and made it an actual after school program. And so it seems promising. Like it's probably a little bit easier if you're already doing something from that 3 to 5 time frame. You know, you already have a program. Maybe you're not calling it after school, But just go ahead and, making it that kind of giving it that official after school name, and maybe even doing a Lights On After School program with the infrastructure that you already have and those resources that you already have. So I know Kellyanne asked, oh, here we go. Let's see, Jennifer Garden, do you know of anywhere that we could look to find out if there are organizations in our area that would be willing to work with us on programs? We are a one-person library, so bringing in extra programs is hard, but we'd love to do something for our kids in the after-school block.
Yeah, so I think, unfortunately, there's no easy one-size-fits-all response to that. One thing that I would say is a great resource for many libraries and many community partners that are trying to reach after-school programs is every state has thanks in large part to funding from the Mott Foundation, who helps support the Afterschool Alliance. So the Afterschool Alliance is kind of the quote-unquote federal hub of a network of 50 statewide after-school networks. So every state has its own statewide after-school network. I'm happy to put you in touch with yours. If you reach out to me, I put my email address in the chat box earlier. And then on top of that, so the statewide after-school networks do a lot to do like kind of quality and quality-based work with after-school programs, and also have really big networks of after-school programs that operate in each state. So in many states, they have a pretty comprehensive list. Unfortunately, there isn't anywhere that I think has the most comprehensive list. It can also be good just to kind of do the grassroots version, where you just, anytime you have kids coming into the library for educational activities, anytime you have parents coming into the library, just ask them where their kid, what kind of programs their kid participates in after school. And just like figure out just by asking around in the community is another strategy. Again, sorry, there's no one-size-fits-all strategy.
Yeah, and I would jump in and suggest, so we did a webinar, it's called Universe of NASA Resources, but it talks a little bit about how to connect with the Night Sky Network and Solar System Ambassadors. Now that's a pretty specific thing that you would be using them for, whether it's a night sky viewing or whether it's a informal presentation, kid-friendly presentation, or hands-on activity about astronomy or space science. But those are two resources that NASA provides that you could connect with. We've done work, and we've done a project with the American Society of Civil Engineers, and they have a really great volunteer arm. I believe their website is, or their email is outreach@asce.org. I'll type that real quick. So that might be worth reaching out to. But then again, like Dan said, just anytime you're, even like your local waterworks or your local public utilities company, if they have an engineer and maybe that person isn't the one facilitating the activity, but if they can come and be a part and answer questions about what they do and build some excitement of like, hey, this STEM concept, people actually use this in the real world. So yeah, but of course there's not a one-size-fits-all.
They posted a link to Starnet's list. So we've been collecting over the years those resources that Brooks was mentioning, like the ASCE, as well as the NASA Night Sky Network, and many others. There's as Dan mentioned, a lot of people trying to collect this kind of information. So you can kind of cruise through our website there to get you started on your path to those links.
And even local companies that do STEM in their, if it's a local, I don't know, but carpentry company or woodworking company or something, anything where somebody that uses STEM in their career could come, and maybe they're not the ones facilitating the activity, but they could come and be a partner with you and talk about their work. I know that always kind of inspires kids. And I just wanted to say, I've done, I've worked as a facilitator for different groups before, and I'd go out to schools, I'd have schools come to the museum I worked at or the nature center, but the most effective and the most impactful programs were always the after school programs. And granted, I was going into the schools and working with the kids afterwards, but once they got rid of that, I just finished school, I don't want to learn anymore. That mentality, usually after a snack and a fun run around game outside, they were always so captivated, and I think, maybe being out of the formal school environment, they were like a little bit more relaxed, and it was really a great way to connect with the kiddos. I know I'm preaching to the choir here because a lot of you guys are already doing that kind of thing. So. All right.
There was one quick question about what was on the stage in the picture that you showed.
Oh yeah.
So Dan, I'm just wondering if you happen to know what the key-shaped sort of book display was behind the speaker when you're talking about media.
Here, 1 second. Let me see if I can find that slide. Media coverage. Oh, I do not off the top of my head. That was an event, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. But that one was definitely co-hosted with a library, but I don't remember the specifics of the event. Sorry.
Wow, that's a neat display though.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. All right. So we'll give you guys a few seconds for any last questions. Again, I'll just put my email in here. Sorry, we normally would have a list of links and things like that to provide you with. And if you join us for our September 26th webinar, we'll have Greg in the chat box throwing in links. And Dan, I think we've made history. This is the first time we've had 2 redheads on the same webinar, so
well done.
Applause.
I'm sorry that we forced that upon everyone.
You're looking good. Don't worry.
Yeah.
We got the balloons to match. We're fine.
All right. So with that, guys, I think I'm going to wrap things up. Again, if you have any questions, if you want anything, any follow-up information or resources, email myself or email Dan, and we'll be happy to get that to you. We hope you'll join us September 26th. We hope you'll fill out the survey. Let us know what we can work on for the next one, and we will see you all very soon.
Thank you all so much, and thank you for having me.
Thanks, Dan.